Many of us, who I like to call spiritually centered people, are going through a bit of suffering right now, have been, frankly, for quite some time. I don't have to speak the obvious when it comes to how unfair, complex, and chaotic our world has been for several years now. And many of us who have been on this path of truth and honesty and love and community and awakening have been valiant in our efforts to do just that, to not just continue to wake up ourselves, but to help our neighbor to wake up as well to the realities that surround us and frankly have surrounded us for a long time. But I'm also hearing from many of you, and I'm hearing from other colleagues, that there are many of us, not all, but too many, who are feeling as if they've run out of, the wind in their sails has been diminished greatly. They're feeling despondent, anxious, angry, and frankly, somewhat out of control. That's not a good thing, and yet it's perfectly understandable. I will tell you that I'm one of those individuals that for months going through this entire journey that we've been on that I still don't think many of us could see coming several years ago, have gone through a bit of depression and sadness and a feeling as if you want to give up, not give up on life necessarily, but losing that enthusiasm and for life and for outcomes. The bottom line is this is a path that none of us can afford to be on right now, because right now is the time for the spiritual warriors to show who they really are. That's you. I know that's you. And yet there are times when you feel as if you're being kicked in the you-know-what and can't get up. I was listening to Regina Meredith, a show or an episode that she had done, I believe on her Patreon, about a year or so ago, and she was talking about this same idea that many spiritually, particularly spiritually oriented people, many truth seekers particularly, we're talking to her and saying to her, you know what, I just don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And the discussion was centered around where that's coming from, and most importantly, where we go with this, because obviously that's not the end of the story. There's no way and no how we can give up now. We're going through something monumental. And I don't need to state the obvious. It seems apocalyptic, but in the true meaning of the apocalypse is revelation, the revelatory period that we're in, revelations of all kind, getting through this dark channel, and on the other side, much greater spirits and souls and individuals because of it. And it's in that vein that I wanted to put together something that addressed these issues that many of us are having. Not only identifying where the shortfall is and where we feel like we may be losing this spiritual tug of war, if you will. Some people are calling it a spiritual war, but what we can do to reverse that, what we can do to put the wind back in our sails. So I want you to stay tuned. I'm going to make this a quick little commentary. Stay tuned. Check this out. It's a course that we are offering, or I should say a workshop and presentation that we are offering to address just that, to get to the crux of this so we can come out on the other side of this stronger than ever. So have a look at this and I'll talk to you soon. Many people on the planet right now are struggling to find their center during a time when everything seems out of balance. Spiritually centered people, though they may understand the global dynamic at play and are determined to counter it, are often left feeling helpless to do anything significant to change their personal and collective course. Are you one of those people? If so, you are not alone. But even in the midst of the global madness, there are certain tools and techniques you can employ to bring yourself back into equilibrium in order to transmute the battle so many of us feel trapped in. But first, let's ask the question, are we actually in a spiritual war?
Without question, these are unprecedented times, extraordinary times. There's chaos coming at us from every direction. There's crisis after crisis coming at us in the news with global events. It's an extraordinary time to be alive, but it's also a very challenging time to be alive. Now, a lot of people talk about this concept of a spiritual war as if it were something taking place in the heavens. And so I would say, yes, we are in a spiritual war, but it's perhaps more grounded and more personal than a lot of people think of it as. And so what I mean by that is that the spiritual war affects our spirit. And you can tell what your spirit, how high or low your spirit is on any given day. And so when you look at an attack on the spirit, that would leave you feeling low. That would leave you feeling in lower states of consciousness. And those are earmarked by the feelings or the emotions of fear, anxiety, self-doubt, overwhelm, a lot of anger and resentment about the things that are going on in this world. The spiritual really is seen in your emotional day-to-day state. It's how you feel. It's the level, the highness, the lowness of your own personal spirit. Are you in a good mood? Are you a slave to negative moods? So how do we know if there's a spiritual war? A lot of people feel it as a constant vibration, a density, a heaviness of just the way that they look at their lives and the way that they feel about the opportunities and possibilities and circumstances that they have in their lives. So yes, I would say it is definitely a spiritual war, and it has a lot of people feeling caged in, closed down, feeling like they don't have purpose anymore, feeling like they're lost, and just really not feeling like themselves anymore. I think that a lot of spiritually minded and what I would consider to be very awakened, even almost enlightened people are having such a hard time in this particular era that we're in, is because for a long time, like what spirituality meant to people is it meant something very esoteric, something very far out. It was like, in order to touch that, in order to reach and experience that, we had to meditate in the cave or become ascetic or practice and read about different philosophies from all over the world. So I think there's a bit of grounding that needs to do. So I think a lot of spiritually minded people are missing out on the most important element here, and that is their spirit shows up in their life, in everything that they do, in the way that they feel about their relationships, in the way that they feel about their work or vocation, in the way that they treat their body, and the way that they show respect and care for themselves. And so I think that in order for spiritually minded people to really make it through these challenging times and really endure and persist with courage and confidence in these times, we have to take a really grounded approach to what it means to approach the spiritual conflict that we're in. People who are awakened, for people who do know what's going on with the world, for people who have taken the time to look into the deeper things happening in our society and geopolitics or politics, for example, this is really affecting them in a unique and powerful way. No matter how much personal work or inner work they've done, they still find themselves really just trapped in cycles of fear, self-doubt, anxiety. Overwhelm is a big one. And when I say fear, I mean even subtle levels of fear, like fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of standing alone against the tribe that is going along with something they disagree with. Emotions are so important to understand right now, and they're so important for you to control because there's two things happening. First and foremost, the attack on society, the social engineering efforts, the effort to manipulate society are all geared at triggering you into thinking with lower parts of the brain marked by emotional thinking versus long-term, rational, logical thinking. On the other hand, the emotional states really identify what levels of consciousness you're operating in. So if your life is full of fear, subtle levels of anxiety, overwhelm, self-doubt, fear of rejection, and these sorts of things, you know that you're operating in very contracted states of consciousness. And when you do so, life feels like a cage. The walls feel like they're closing in. When you master your emotional state, you can at any moment lift yourself up above that and live in more expansive states of consciousness and draw into your reality the people, the places, the experiences, and the opportunities that really move your life forward and bring your power back to you. As a person who's been engaged in personal development for close to 20 years, I've done a lot of wild and far out things, from shamanic plant medicines to all types of different meditations, qigong, tai chi, and lots of different things. Today, I feel very strongly that the most important skills and tools that we can master are the skill of letting go of the negative states of emotions that keep us locked into bad moods. We also can take a very close look at the inner dialogue, the inner critic, the self-talk that we have, and we can actually learn to separate ourselves from that critic and learn to speak to ourselves in a way that make things seem more possible in our lives. What you can expect in this workshop is to completely shift your perspective on what's possible for your emotional reality in everyday life. I will teach you the very important, most practical, most useful, and perhaps the most valuable skill you can know for the times, which is the skill of letting go. Letting go of emotional patterns that don't serve you, letting go of belief systems that don't serve you, and letting go of thoughts that don't serve you. I'll also show you how the mind is being trained to work against itself and how you can rise up above self-sabotage in order to feel and know that you are powerful and capable of making it through these times, not only enduring them, but being a force of good and service to others, the people that you love, your family, and your community.
Join self-mastery coach and consciousness warrior Dylan Charles for a transformational session that will give you the specific tools needed to not only navigate these challenging times, but to win the spiritual war that is both personal and collective. Learn proven techniques to erase the self-sabotage that has threatened your own sovereignty and finally bring yourself back on track as we all navigate this difficult terrain. Activate your power to win in challenging times. Learn how to counter the attack on spiritual and emotional sovereignty with self-mastery coach and shamanic practitioner Dylan Charles, and me, Alexis Brooks, your workshop host and course moderator. Take back the power that has always been within you. You just need the right guidance to put you back on track. Now is the time to put yourself back in charge of your own life and destiny.